Computer Chevron 1 is in charge. Chevron 1 is stuck where it is, the amount of power at 203%. When they built the Stargate for the first time, it looked like a huge tire. On set, everyone knew that the movie was over if they not able to fix it. So, they painted the whole 22FFT ring again the next day and hoped for the best. For the best. Then the head of visual effects was fired, and then he was fired again. Over and over. He forgot how many times Roland Emmerich told him to leave. He worked in his shed with iced tea powder and a drill, though, and somehow made the most famous Link music effect in movie history. What took place in that shed changed the whole field of science fiction. Kurt Russell said no over and over to Stargate, and no one knew why for a long time. It turned out that he had been reading the wrong script, an early draft that should have stayed with the writer. In other words, when the offer came up again, he turned it down right away. The producers tried over and over. So badly did they need his name. People from other countries were more interested in the movie because it wasn't made by a big company. The sounds he makes more than anything written on a page. When he finally saw the real script for the movie, everything changed. He looked up and said, "This isn't so bad." That small change let the $7 million, which was a big chunk of a $55 million song deal, $10 million budget. His role became the movie's main point. And by the time Stargate debuted at the top of the charts on October 28, 1994, with 16.6 million viewers over the weekend, it made perfect sense to take the risk. But James Spader was working behind the scenes, having something completely different happen. He really meant it when he told Entertainment Weekly that the writing was terrible. He had just come from well-known movies and was having a weird time in his business where he needed money, even though the work didn't interest him. Even though the story felt bad, it drew him in. He went in because he found the bad things strangely interesting. Still, he didn't stop being angry. He had disagreements with Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin about the words and pushed back. Whenever a line didn't seem right. Russell was happy with being a steady main man who didn't ask questions. Even with all of his flaws, Spader was still fighting with his norms. Anyway, he gave a performance that helped the movie make $196.6 million around the world, which is almost 4 times its budget. The stress kept rising until it was too high to handle any longer. Tomorrow, Spader wouldn't get out of his van. He wouldn't leave until the pages were changed. Until that took place, making things stopped. The crews waited. The money ran out. Developing Emmer grabbed pens and started writing again right then and there to get the cameras moving again. After that, when things stopped moving, Russell lost it. He walked right up to Spout's car and asked for answers. Spur replied that he should just admit what was clear. The conversation is awful. That moment became famous because Russell replied with being totally honest. Without a doubt, it's awful. That's why they give you $1 million. You should do it for free if it was great. He had agreed to he was good at the business side of making movies in a way that Spur wasn't. And that one line summed up all the different things they had done over the years. Now more than ever, money was important because the whole project was paid for by private donors. Every big studio had turned them down at Stargate, saying that science fantasy was no longer alive. It was up to Emmerich and Devlin. They had to pay $55 million on their own, so every delay cost money. Danger. They were only able to find marketing because MGM had an empty for a release date on their calendar. Even back then, studio execs didn't believe Emmerich's promise to send the movie for that much money. They thought it would cost $100 million. When the movie was a big hit, it made over $71 million in the US. The success in the US alone showed that the risk was worth it and paved the way for the long-running brand that then came. Even small things went wrong. The team built the 22FFT for the first time. They painted the ring prop flat black to make it look old and spooky. It looked like a huge Goodyear tire in the studio lights. Coming later claimed it had no shape or depth, and rather than being strange, it felt it's cheap and big. They knew that the Stargate looking was important to the whole story. Strong, so they painted it metallic silver between days of filming. Brand knew there were many different ways that color caught light. Torches, floodlights, the moonlight bounced off the metal, giving a depth that wasn't there before. All of a sudden, the ring sparkled. Like something that is both old and new at the same time. That hasty choice became the visual brand of the whole business. Stargate came to stand for everything that the silver gate with glowing symbols meant. And not having that shift, people might have laughed out loud at test showing of the movie. Instead, the portal became famous and was used on movie ads, TV shows, and tools that fans still use today, many years later. To make this world come to life, the work team needed room. They went to Long Beach and into the Spruce Goose Dome. It was the largest standalone dome made of metal in the world. Built for $25 million to house Howard Hughes's big Hercules plane. In 1992, when the plane went to Oregon, it turned into a huge, empty dome that was ready to be filled. Inside that very large room, people worked on building everything from Stargate Command to the Raz Pyramid ship. 300 people worked on it for 6 months, making sets that went over more ground. More than 4 football fields. The size made the movie seem bigger than its budget. Though shooting was over, chaos then came. In the week before the movie was due, the makers chose what to do with it. Needed more effects to look good. There are 66 new shots, not just a few. This meant that the effects team had to work non-stop, night after night. Seeing for difficult tasks, effects artist Mitch Dra used Domino, an early real-time compositing system, to get them done. Work to do. It only took him 7 days to finish all 66 shots. It worked. The late additions made the movie more exciting and helped tie everything together. There were scenes that didn't feel very strong. It helped to add computer effects, but the visual heart parts of the movie came from an experiment done in the garage. Roland Emmerich turned down every idea for the gate's liquid surface and even fired VFX supervisor Jeffrey Oken, and photographer David Stump went into a garage and hid in a small plastic tank. They filled it was mixed with water and iced tea powder using a drill and a wooden beam. They saw that when the swirl stopped, the strudel effect behind the gate was a strange swirl that became its own style. Oak and I remembered that mirror images used to be made with mercury tanks. So he used a curved camera to record the bottom of the water. That brief moment, this part of the portal became its heart. There were more tests to come. They used 26 pounds of pressure to shoot an air mortar into the tank. A whole block of water shot out and fell on Dave's stump, wetting it. He was whole. They turned down the pressure to just over 2 pounds and filmed it. Once more, and finally caught the powerful kush followed by the Fadinga vortex. Oken showed this to Emmerich because he thought he would be fired again. The director smiled and said, "This is great." Years later, when the TV crew came back, Stargate SG-1 tried to copy the look, but they didn't know what the real one was. Setting the heat. 50 pounds of pressure was used in their first test. The shot of water, it rained all over, broke down the setup, and soaked the music gear. After a lot of trial and error, they finally got the look right by using real water blasts as music instead of just CGI. Because they wanted it to look and feel real. Making the whole Stargate frame-by-frame process was needed. The team fired fast-moving liquids, sometimes at 120 frames per second, and then put the pictures on top of each other by hand. 3D rendering with the computers that were around in 1994, the trip through the gate took 30 days. When Emmer saw the finished copy, he was so angry that he fired Oken once more. The pressure grew. Things got worse. Oken and the artist Jeff Williams they yelled on the roof and then laughed and went back to work. They put together parts of old things in new ways. Instead of modeling, use color spaces. With that version, Emmerich finally got his yes, please. The problems kept happening on set. There had to be 2 cams set up at the mirror angles or just right for players walking through the gate. Lasers built into the props were used to mark the spot where the water plane would go next. However, the lasers came with eye safety caps. Harm. Russell wouldn't go through until someone told him that looking at them could make him blind. Showed it was safe. That's how long Oken stood in the beam to show him. It's not going to hurt. Russell still kept his eyes closed even after that, moving forward. At the same time, the second camera operator kept making changes to his setup. The mirror angles were messed up every time the team looked away until the cinematographer finally stopped them. It took longer than anyone thought to work on those morph shots for Stargate, and music, slowly came together. Caused the team 9 months of stress and anger. They were only allowed to make 5 shots. Still, each one they couldn't keep hold of them because nothing was acting right. When they first heard about brand new bot transforming software because they thought it would save them time. It didn't work right in early tests, so it was so bad that ears moved across the screen away from faces. Music. Roland Emmerich kept telling them that it had to look mechanical, not smooth. While they were testing it, things got even worse. The team came up with a strange idea because of what he asked: music, empty space. They wanted things to fold into places they shouldn't have been. And the more they looked around, it seemed even less likely. It took nights to build motion control rigs. To put together, and it could only be used for the morning's first shot before being taken down again. In the end, the team they threw away all the tools they had bought and made their own program from scratch. Even now, Oken says that the music morphs still look a little off. And the fact that something is wrong makes them feel strange and alien for a while. With the viewer. The work on empty space made its own maze. Oken had a knowledge of physics. But this thought pushed him to the edge because it went against everything he knew. It was hard for him to explain it to Emmerich, and to the artists who had to make it happen. They wanted to show that things could fold into shapes that didn't exist. Rules. A lot of the time, Emmerich smoked while following protests. It can't work. But Oken kept trying to figure out how to make the math work for the movie. These caps changed shape, there were no real 3D models at all. It had to be the right frame for the 2D pieces, putting together frames. It was up to the team to shoot people wearing the hats and then shoot them again without them, and then make layers that covered up and matched every one of them, move the camera. Before 1994, no one had tried anything like this, and one of the first steps toward the unique mechanical morphing style that made Stargate stand out was this method. The snakeguard helmets made things even more difficult because the players couldn't see the music through them at all. Heavy rubber was molded over plastic frames to make the helmets, which had a detailed serpent pattern on them, everything. There were no holes or cuts that could be seen. That made every turn the exciting scene into a danger. Performers had to take it easy and remember where they were going. They should trust the crew to get them into each place. Reddit fans laughed later that Jaffa would walk into walls or fall off cliffs. And the joke worked because it was pretty true. The helmets were around 24 in everywhere. And even though they became famous, they were easy to use. When Stargate SG-1 came along with a lot less money, the show they didn't try to copy the complicated helmet changes from the movie because it would have been too hard. Cost a lot. Simple magic was used to make the eyes inside those hats glow. Batteries were hidden in the outfit. 29V batteries were taped to the inside of each helmet. There is wood inside the helmet. Wires went through the building and drove small ruby eyes made of plastic that are lit up. It looked natural when they were lit up, and dangerous without showing any technology that could be seen. The caps' insides was tracking actors, so they wrote down their names and numbers by hand. A few copies later, watch batteries were stuck to LEDs, showing how simple the idea was. The helmets were finally auctioned off and sold for a lot of money, partially because of how well they were made, and partly because they really felt heavy and dangerous. The bright eyes that had stuck out so well that cosplayers still copy the style today. Since they couldn't see, so every fight scene had to be planned with military precision. Specifics. While their helmets were off, stunt artists learned their moves. Then did them without their eyes when the shooting started. The crew had to move them. Put them in place and give them advice in between takes. People can see it once they let them know the truth and watch how carefully they move through the chaos. In later jokes, fans said that at Jaffa they would put on a helmet, hope for the best, and fire without looking back. The hats were said to have nanotech screens that folded away into empty space, but the show never showed this. Showed this because it was cheap. When you watch the fight scene with Kurt Russell, the guards move like men who know that one wrong step, music, could send them flying. This makes the task clear. Then the camera then moves to Jada Vidson's story. He never meant to be an actress for starters. He had all, and he was a fashion assistant in London, and someone saw him at a party in 1991. Hugh was drunk and having fun. He did work with the people who made Princess Diana, as he wasn't going to act until Neil Jordan cast him in The Crying Game without even giving him a chance to try out. The way he played in 1992, he was nominated for an Oscar for his music, and he showed up to the 1993 event and he wore riding breeches and boots that reached his thighs because that was his way. Even he said he didn't want all that attention and hated the instant fame. To be famous for playing. Before he even got nominated, he already had plans to go back to fashion. The time when Stargate directors asked him to work with them in 1993, he wanted to say no without getting someone's feelings hurt. He chose an easy answer. He asked for $1 million, thinking it was such a crazy amount that they would leave. They agreed right then and there. He had to make a movie he had never done before. All of a sudden. Wished. For years, that one paycheck was the only thing that showed how much he was worth. After taking a break to do some shooting in 1994, he went back to fashion almost right away. He didn't fully commit to the song until he saw the costumes that Joseph Parro made for RA. They had velvet on top of them, Egyptian symbols are carved into pieces made of lame, leather, and plastic. One robe used purple, teal, and gold lame and panels with pleats that sparkled. In the light. The cape went behind him and had big metal and wood pieces on it. Panels with composite cobras cut into them. It was only the cap that held lapis at Thea red resin panel on the face that hangs down from copper bars. The thought that went into for someone who cared more about craftsmanship than fame. These designs finally gave the job meaning. Because of the decisions he made, the set had new problems. He wouldn't take out his nipple music holes during the scenes with people without shirts on had to be hidden by changing the outfits. From the camera changed. As the light changed, Porro's team kept reshaping clothes to cover up little things that kept getting clear. Then something strange happened. When Davidson's assistant went missing with his phone, cash, and methadone on the second day of shooting. He became scared, and the stress of his worry weighed on the output for days. Roland. After that, Emmerich told them he could write a whole book about what it was like to work for him. As filming, Davidson had trouble delivering lines because of his drug problems. The story went on. Even though they gave him big cue cards with phonetic words on them, he still couldn't read them. As Devlin remembered, they didn't think Davidson would be like the person they wrote the part for. Test your audience. Bad response and asked why Kurt Russell didn't just crush the character. That made the producers work hard. Go back to the room where you change. They gave Ra's eyes a fiery glow and changed the voice and showed that he had an alien bug inside him. They changed the whole character into the last alien alive from a race that is dying. When she met Devlin Davidson before the music came out to describe the changes, he found him sober and glad they hadn't taken him away. Davidson told him they saved him because they thought he was going to ruin the movie. The test scores went up after the edits, which helped Stargate dodge disaster and set the stage for the future of the business. Ra was never meant to be an alien at first. Developing told him that he was supposed to be a person who worked for the real aliens. Davidson's strange presence in music changed everything. Instead of reshooting, they went with the weirdness and came up with the idea of an alien being a parasite that controls a human body. Later, this one choice led to the whole story of the gold. In the end movie, the voice wasn't Davidson's. Either. His normal tone wasn't strong enough for them. That's why the team pitch changes, layered tracks, music, and echoing effects were used on every line. David Arnold's music wrapped around the new voice until it made the character sound ancient and holy. Test your audience still had trouble following the story, so the team added music to help explain important parts. They made a clearer alien speech and new shots that showed Ra's real shape just seconds before he was destroyed. These little things made a big difference. The story all of a sudden clicked, and people replied. The movie got out of trouble and found a good ending. Into a success that no one expected. The finished shape of the horror costumes was based on what anyone thought would happen. When the producers looked at Davidson in full costume, standing tall under the huge hat with sparkling eyes and many layers of shimmering cloth, they knew he could never be a normal person. Bad guy. He felt like a huge god because of the style, and that pushed them. Going even more toward the alien identity that made the series what it is today. The area around Yuma and Buttercup Valley became when the crew got there in the summer of 1993. It was like they were in a different world. Star Wars and Raiders of the Lost Ark had already been through the desert. Even so, the directors still wished to go even further. They shaped huge alien buildings out of the sand to look like real things. They were made with old Egyptian designs that made them look like they came straight out of the sand dunes. After each take, a group of people rushed in with rakes and brushes to clean up the area so it would stay that way. Not touched. It was planned that July would be the best month to avoid visitors and dune buggies. It kept quiet. It gave them room to imagine a whole world. And when they needed very big aliens walking on the sand, they hung very big, putting fake frames on horses to make them look like they can't be real is not possible. The change was so convincing that other producers started calling to ask where the film was shot after it came out. The reason they chose this strange spot was to make their whole movie look like it. But all that beauty came with a cost. the heat was terrible. The temperature rose above 120 degrees Fahrenheit and would drop if someone left their plastic water bottles under the sun. The crew hid their drinks in the sand to keep them cool. Cameras got stuck from getting too hot. The film was wavy. Almost every day, people fell to the ground from being too hot. And the rescuers stayed close because they knew it would happen again and again. People wearing Horace Guard hats had to deal with the worst because there wasn't much air inside. The party lights made it even better. Warmer. They were having a hard time breathing. Because of this, the plan kept changing between the first light of dawn and the last hour before night, when the temperature dropped from deadly to just awful. It was necessary to cool down even the cameras' systems to stay alive long enough to record video. Still, the movie had to. There were too many people, and the budget didn't allow for hundreds of extras to walk around in the background. The team then came up with something easy and smart in a strange way. They made stick figures and wrapped them up. Dressed in cloth robes and put them a long way behind the players. It looked like farmers and workers standing far away. A lot of money was saved. Didn't get caught in the final shots. Then, when the story got to the last fight, they added about 200 real extras who had to race. Music played as people walked up and down the dunes in heavy clothes in the Arizona sun. There were real people in the front, stick figures in the back, and extra pictures in between. Shot on green screen around cooking fires to make the world look more like an alien one. Everything built on top of each other until the crowd looked huge even without the show. IT spent money it didn't have. They also learned how to follow the light. Everyone in the desert looked beautiful during golden hour, so they kept an eye on the time every afternoon. The wrecks, everything looked like a picture. The sand got softer and the light shone on it. One of the best things about the movie was the light, which the cinematographer and the rest of the crew worked hard to catch. They tried to take in as much of it as possible in that short time. They even made tiny versions of the city's towers and shot at them. They used a blue screen right there in the desert to make the models look like they were in real life. Paying attention to light made the whole world feel complete. It helped set Abydos apart from people had seen every other desert planet. Matte drawings and miniatures did a lot of the hard work. It was a scale model of the pyramid spaceship that was made with the hieroglyphs. It was shot separately and then put together with the desert scenes. Then everything changed when the company recut the movie and decided all of a sudden they wanted 66 new visuals. Makeup shots. They let the team have a week. It should not have been possible, but Jeffrey Oken, who was in charge of visual effects, found an artist who had a domino system, a rare computer that let blending happen in real time. In place of waiting while each layer took hours to render, the artist could see everything right away and make changes as they went. At work every day for 7 days, he made all 66 shots. The mix of useful miniature buildings shot on blue screen and towers built in the desert made a one-piece city. At first, Roland Emmerich didn't like computer effects, but after seeing a test where bullets stopped moving, he knew that tiny work had. He didn't expect that digital tricks and boundaries could open doors for him. Oken's own story that happened in the movie became a myth. Emmerich hired him and fired him more than once, sometimes irately and sometimes jokingly. But Oken always came through. It's amazing how the director, music, acted like the firing never took place. The most famous part happened as Oken's group checked out the Watergate effect. They kept changing the pressure of the air. They tried to make the right wave in a tank of water and finally found that 2.1 pounds per square and gave them the looks great. Oken told Emmerich that he knew he was fired, but that this should still be seen by the director. As soon as Emmerich saw it, he changed his tone and said he never fired anyone because the effect was so great. The situation at work was a mess, but it had effects that made the movie what it is today. Is Oken even on the weekends? I kept getting asked for new ideas. On paper, he was fired, but the movie still needed him. I hated Emmerich, but people kept trying to do things that computers could only do. After the bullet, music, test made him feel good, he began to look over all of their computer experiments again. All of a sudden, got excited about the possibilities of digital. The calls kept coming in. Ideas were thrown around. Going back and forth. And even though Oken's job was unclear, the results kept getting better. While all it did happen, and there was another problem in post-production. After being cut again, the writers asked for those 66 new shots, and the team only had 1 week to finish them. They put together little towers. It took a long time to matte paint the clouds, explosions, and digital layers. Specifics. When they were done, the movie was saved, and the domino method was born. The only thing that kept the plan alive. In the business world, the tool didn't last long, but this one was especially weak. At that time, the machine was what held the whole movie together. The effects scene. The team only worked during the photochemical age, when real film was still used for everything. They used 35 film cameras from Panasonic and Kodak stock. There were no digital systems of today. There was no color grading or quick playback like there is today. They used a real water tank and air cannons to make the water tank image. They shot at 120 frames per second. It took 30 full days to finish the Stargate wormhole scene. Make things on old computers. They could only show MR graphs and still shots. While it worked. Labs were in charge of the color timing. Laser printers added layers of film together. Several cartoon studios worked on each frame. They made models, changed the skies, painted matte backgrounds, and put everything together. They did it all with almost no computer tools to help them. What they did with those limits, music, still moves people after all these years. As the effects team worked, the outfit designer, it is said that Joseph A. Aporo made some of the most complicated costumes ever used in a science fantasy movie. The 5 different parts of Ra's costume needed to be put together by a team. Put together. There was a purple and blue velvet robe with different colored trim. Lane panels, a leather vest with Egyptian symbols cut into it, and a huge undercarpeting with panels made of wood and metal that are covered with composite cobras. A headdress made of plastic that is etched in gold and set with lapis and tiger eye stones. The business also made more than 600 extra guns. Some were made from clear plastic to look like granite, and it took weeks to finish them. All of this took place under A. The film made more than $196 million after its $55 million investment. Everywhere. Jay Davidson, who played Ra, came into the show with a lot of his own. He was willing to pay $1 million for the part, and he got it. That part is proven, but the work itself was hard. He had trouble with his words. The directors didn't think the show would be what they thought it would be. Davidson later admitted that he had hated fame very much. A lot of stories on the internet are about temper tantrums and fights, but they aren't based on facts, proof from the people who made it. What has been written down is the fight with the performance of music and the money he got for it. The useful armor that the Horus guards wore became a source of "I feel bad for the players." The eyes were lit up by real lights that were hidden inside. Driven by battery packs, and the helmets didn't let much air in. It might take 6 hours to put them in. Taking the players out once they were inside, not easy. Every trip to the bathroom became a big deal. The heat inside Theus the desert got hotter. Some artists almost passed out from the heat of their helmets. They fainted. More than one time, medical teams were called. Extras dressed in thick robes for the final fight. People ran over hot sand dunes. The monster with the maze. The team made small costumes for dogs because the costumes for horses were too heavy for the horses to move around in normally. Even though it was hard, Ra's look was the most memorable visual feature. In the movie. The helmets that changed shapes were made with a clever trick. The players were filmed without hats, then again with them, and put the shots together by using intermediate parts that matched the movement of the camera. A group of about 40 to make it work. People wrote their own tools. Along with Paro's intricate fabrics, gold discs, hieroglyphs, and with its stone-set headdresses, Ra became a classic style that carried the film's name.